Hello, I'm Vassia Stefanou. I'm going to present my human-computer interaction course and a specific aspect of it. So a few words about me. I got my bachelor's degree in computer information system from DEREE, the American College of Greece, and then I got my master's degree in human-computer interaction from Heriot-Watt University in the UK. And several years later, I got my PhD in e-research and technology enhanced learning at from Lancaster University, UK. So I'm an assistant professor at the Management Information Systems Department at DEREE, and I also serve as an advisor to the MIS Academic Society and to the Women in Technology and Science Club, and I'm also a mentor at the Girls in Tech Greek chapter. So the context of my course here, the human-computer interaction course is a senior course, and most IT students at the college have to take it. It's a requirement for their degree. So we get to cover guidelines and principles of human-computer interaction and user experience, and I also demonstrate the UX design methodology, so they have to actually apply this and create a research project. So we have two summative assessments. The one is a midterm exam. It comprises of essay questions, and we assess the theoretical concepts. And the research project is the hands-on project. Students have to design, or redesign actually, specific application. So they have to follow the steps of analysis, design, prototype, and evaluation. So the research project is 60% of their grade. And then we have a lot of formative assessments. I assign to students scholarly articles from journals, primarily, on the subject. And then they also have to present these readings in class. They do this in groups. And we have a lot of in-class interactive activities. Now, the course requires teamwork. It's an essential component. They need this to brainstorm, to come up with ideas. I want the students to be able to discuss with each other and see the creative process of collaborating with other people. We need this in this particular course in particular. So students have to work in group. Now, when we're in class, we do this all the time, and this is feasible either we meet face-to-face or online in a synchronous way, but also in an asynchronous way. That's also possible. And we have a lot of in-class group activities, such as, for example, these are specific things. Students have to identify the elements of particular interaction. I give them examples. They have to simulate data collection. So some students play the role of users while in class, and they get interviewed by the other students, or they get observed. We have activities with applied design thinking, etc. They have to create scenarios, personas, etc. So collaboration in class is easily implemented for formative assessments. Now, the main challenge is that I wanted to incorporate the collaboration in the project, the summative assessment. Now, this is an essential element because it typically, in the actual working environment, students will have eventually to work in groups, obviously. However, the problem for me was that if I were to assess the overall work, then it wouldn't be easy to identify each student's contribution. I could have assigned specific tasks, or perhaps ask the students to delegate tasks, but this meant that students would end up knowing just some parts of the project, not all of them, and everything was important for me. So the solution that I implemented for several years now, and I get to improve it every semester, is that I have each student serving both as a designer and as a user in two different teams. So each student has to wear two hats, designer, user. So at the beginning of the semester, each student has to suggest an application that they frequently use. So they become the user for this application. And then I get to assign the topics to other students. So another person will assume the role of the designer for something that was suggested by a classmate. So practically, let's say a student is part of two separate teams, all of them. I make sure that this happens. So I have, for example, the X team with student 1 and student 2, student 1 being the designer, student 2 is the user, and then there's Y team with a third student coming in. So student 3 is a designer, and student 1, who used to be the designer in X team, is the user for this team. So this happens actually in parallel, it's not the one then the other. So this allowed me clear delegation. Each student has to complete all deliverables. The project has the 4 stages we mentioned: analysis, design, prototyping, evaluation. So practically the designer gets to complete the first 3 stages. They submit this. This is part A of the project: analysis, design, prototyping. So when students are done with part A, analysis, design, prototyping, they submit their work to me and also to their classmate who acted as a user. So that classmate is going to evaluate to complete that is the last phase, and they're going to evaluate the work of the designer. So this works quite well actually, because the type of evaluation I ask them to do is a heuristics evaluation. So normally for this to be done, whoever gets to evaluate has to play the role of the user. So in our case, they were the users. So this is just an example. Suppose that John suggests application A because he is using it, but he feels that it could be improved, and Mary suggests application B, Greg suggests application C. So let's assume this hypothetical scenario in which my class has only 3 students. So John, I get to assign to John application C, so he has to interview and observe Greg as a user to collect data. And when John is done, Greg will evaluate John's work. And similarly, Mary will have, for example, to redesign application A, so John will be her user. And then John will evaluate Mary's work. And Greg will have to redesign application B, so Mary will be his user and Mary will be Greg's evaluator. So some possible issues that emerged over the years: if a student delays submission of part A, then I don't want the other student to get delayed as well. So I simply assign the work of another designer, which is okay, because it's not really a problem. The evaluation phase can be done by a student who has to simulate the user. They don't have to be the actual user. I mean, it works a little bit better, but they don't have to be. In real life, they will have to simulate being the user to properly evaluate. And the other thing is, what happens if a student has to resit for the project? That is, if they fail or if they never submit a project in the first place. In that case, the student gets to do the entire project, so we don't split the work of the evaluation. And they have to find their own user, practically. So I thought that was worth mentioning it. Thank you for hearing me.